Some people don't enter your life to walk with you. They enter to take from you slowly, quietly, and persistently. They don't announce their intentions. They don't look dangerous. In fact, many of them come smiling, sounding reasonable, even caring. But over time, you begin to feel drained, confused, pressured, or diminished. This message is not about hatred, bitterness, or fear. It is about wisdom, protection, and discernment, because there are certain things no one should ever ask from you, and the moment they do, it reveals who they truly are. Stay with this message, because if you've ever felt uneasy around someone without knowing why, what you're about to hear will finally give language to what your spirit already sensed. There are people who don't want your success. They want access to your energy, access to your peace, access to your time, access to your obedience, access to your silence. And the most dangerous ones are not aggressive. They are subtle. They don't demand loudly. They pressure softly. They don't force. They normalize. And before you realize it, you've given away parts of yourself you never intended to lose. This is why discernment matters more than kindness, and awareness matters more than approval. Because once someone asks you for something that violates your inner truth, your boundaries, or your growth, that request alone is a warning sign. This is not about isolating yourself from the world. It's about protecting what's sacred within you. Your peace is sacred. Your purpose is sacred. Your direction is sacred. And anyone who repeatedly asks you to compromise these things is not aligned with your future. They may have been part of your past, but they cannot walk with you into what's next. And the hardest part is this: some of these people will be close to you. Friends, family, colleagues, people you've known for years, but closeness does not equal safety, and familiarity does not equal loyalty. There are moments in life when silence becomes your shield and distance becomes your wisdom. When you stop explaining yourself and start observing patterns, because patterns never lie. Words can deceive, intentions can be hidden, but consistent requests reveal character. Pay attention to what people keep asking from you, not once, but repeatedly, because what they repeatedly ask for is what they value most from you. And sometimes it's not love, it's control. This message is for those who feel tired of being pulled in different directions, pressured to be smaller, quieter, more agreeable, more accessible than they should be. It's for those who feel something is off but haven't been able to explain it. It's for those who are growing and noticing resistance from people who benefited from the old version of them. Growth changes relationships, healing exposes motives, and elevation makes hidden intentions uncomfortable. As we go deeper, you will begin to recognize 5 specific things that no one with good intentions should ever ask from you. These are not small requests. They are not harmless. They are subtle gateways that, once opened, lead to loss of identity, loss of peace, and loss of direction. And once you see them clearly, you will never unsee them again. This awareness will change how you listen, how you respond, and who you allow access to your life. Stay present. Don't rush this. This is not entertainment. This is protection. And by the end of this message, you won't just understand why certain people make you feel uneasy. You'll know exactly who to stay away from and why, without guilt, without anger, and without apology. The first thing you must stay away from anyone who asks from you is your silence about what hurts you. The moment someone pressures you to stay quiet about mistreatment, disrespect, manipulation, or emotional harm, they reveal that their comfort matters more than your well-being. This request rarely comes directly. It comes disguised as peacekeeping, loyalty, maturity, or not making things bigger than they are. But silence that is forced is not peace. It is suppression. And suppression always turns inward before it turns destructive. Anyone who benefits from your silence is not protecting you. They are protecting themselves. There is a difference between choosing silence for wisdom and being pressured into silence for control. When someone asks you to let it go without accountability, to move on without healing, or to stop talking about it, because it makes them uncomfortable, they are asking you to abandon your truth. Over time, this creates inner conflict. You begin to question your feelings, downplay your experiences, and mistrust your instincts. That is not growth, that is erosion. And erosion happens slowly enough that you don't notice what's missing until you feel empty. People who ask for your silence often frame themselves as reasonable and calm, while labeling you as emotional, dramatic, or difficult. This is how power shifts quietly. Once you accept silence, you accept the rewriting of reality. Your pain becomes inconvenient. Your voice becomes a problem. Your boundaries become too much, and the more you comply, the more entitled they feel to ask again. Silence becomes the currency that keeps the relationship functioning at your expense. Pay close attention to how someone reacts when you speak honestly. Do they listen or do they minimize? Do they take responsibility or do they deflect? Do they seek understanding or do they rush you into forgiveness without change? These reactions tell you everything. Healthy people want clarity even when it's uncomfortable. Unsafe people want quiet even when it costs you your peace. And the danger is not just what you don't say to them, it's what you stop saying to yourself. Silence demanded by others disconnects you from your intuition. Your body remembers what your mouth is forbidden to express. The tension you feel, the heaviness in your chest, the restlessness in your spirit. These are signals. They are not weaknesses, they are warnings. When you ignore them long enough, you start believing that endurance is the same as strength. But true strength is honesty with yourself first. Even if no one else approves, anyone who truly cares about you will never ask you to disappear emotionally so they can remain comfortable. They may not always agree with you, but they will respect your right to speak. They will not rush your healing or silence your processing. They will understand that truth, spoken with integrity, is not an attack. It is a bridge to growth. When someone repeatedly asks for your silence, what they are really asking for is permission to continue without consequence. This is where discernment becomes essential. Not every confrontation needs a response, but every pattern needs recognition. If someone consistently benefits when you stay quiet and becomes hostile when you speak, that is not a misunderstanding, that is a dynamic. And dynamics don't change without boundaries. Sometimes the boundary is distance. Sometimes it is disengagement. Sometimes it is choosing yourself without explanation. Silence chosen by you is power. Silence demanded from you is danger. And once you understand this difference, you stop sacrificing your inner voice to keep external peace. Because peace that costs you your truth is not peace at all. It is captivity disguised as harmony. The second thing you must stay away from anyone who asks from you is your time without respect. Time is not just hours and minutes, it is life itself. It is energy, focus, opportunity, and direction. When someone consistently demands your time while disregarding your priorities, your limits, or your growth, they are not asking for connection, they are asserting entitlement. And entitlement is one of the clearest signs that a relationship is becoming imbalanced. People who respect you value your time. People who use you feel owed by it. This request rarely sounds abusive. It sounds casual, familiar, even friendly. Just one more thing. It won't take long. You're the only one I can rely on. Over time, these phrases condition you to place their needs above your own. You delay your rest. You postpone your goals. You push aside your plans. And because nothing dramatic happens all at once, you don't realize how much of yourself you've handed over until exhaustion becomes your baseline. When someone feels comfortable interrupting your progress but never supporting it, that is not closeness, that is consumption. Watch how people respond when you are unavailable. Do they understand or do they guilt you? Do they adapt or do they pressure? Do they respect your no or do they keep negotiating until it becomes a reluctant yes? These reactions expose intent. Respectful people adjust. Selfish people persist. Manipulative people punish. And the punishment may not be loud, it may be emotional distance, passive aggression, or subtle withdrawal, meant to teach you that saying no has consequences. There are people who only feel secure when you are accessible. Your availability reassures them. Your responsiveness validates them. Your presence stabilizes them. But what they call closeness is often dependency, and dependency quietly drains you. You begin living on borrowed time that belongs to your future, your calling, your healing, and the more you give, the more they take, because they mistake generosity for obligation. Time without respect leads to resentment, even in kind-hearted people. You start feeling irritated over small things, not because you are bitter, but because your boundaries have been ignored for too long. Resentment is not a flaw, it is a signal that something is out of alignment. It appears when your inner values are being violated repeatedly. And ignoring that signal doesn't make you patient, it makes you invisible to yourself. Healthy relationships create space for growth. They don't compete with your purpose, they support it. They don't require constant access to prove loyalty. They understand that distance does not mean abandonment, and independence does not mean rejection. When someone cannot respect your time, they are not prepared to respect your evolution, because growth requires solitude, focus, and intentional use of energy, things that takers rarely honor. Pay attention to patterns, not promises. Someone may say they appreciate you, but appreciation without behavioral change is manipulation in disguise. If they continue to overstep, interrupt, and demand while dismissing your limits, their actions are speaking clearly. And at some point, clarity demands response, not through arguments, but through decisions. Sometimes the most powerful response is restructuring access. You are not selfish for protecting your time. You are not unkind for choosing your priorities. You are not disloyal for being unavailable. You are responsible for your life, and anyone who truly respects you will never ask you to abandon it for their convenience. The right people adjust their expectations. The wrong people reveal themselves when you stop overgiving. The third thing you must stay away from anyone who asks from you is your self-betrayal. This is when someone pressures you to act against your values, instincts, or inner knowing in order to keep their approval, comfort, or acceptance. They may not use the word betrayal, but that is exactly what it becomes. Because every time you ignore your intuition to please someone else, you fracture trust with yourself. And once that trust is weakened, confusion enters quietly and confidence begins to erode. Self-betrayal often begins with small compromises. You laugh at things that make you uncomfortable. You agree to things that don't sit right with you. You stay in conversations, environments, or relationships that drain you because you don't want to disappoint anyone. Over time, these small compromises accumulate into a life that no longer feels aligned. You start feeling disconnected, restless, and unsure of yourself, not because you're lost, but because you've been walking in directions that were never meant for you. People who ask you to betray yourself rarely see themselves as harmful. They believe their needs are reasonable. They frame your discomfort as sensitivity and your boundaries as resistance. They may say things like, "You're overthinking, it's not that serious," or "Everyone does this." These phrases are designed to normalize your discomfort and silence your inner alarm. But intuition doesn't shout, it whispers, and ignoring it repeatedly trains you to doubt your own judgment. The most dangerous aspect of self-betrayal is that it feels voluntary. No one is forcing you. You choose compliance to avoid conflict, rejection, or loneliness. But peace purchased at the cost of authenticity never lasts. Eventually, the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be becomes unbearable. That's when anxiety, burnout, and emotional numbness begin to surface. Not as punishment, but as signals urging you back to alignment. Anyone who truly respects you will never ask you to violate your core values. They may challenge your thinking, but they will not pressure you to abandon your integrity. They will not mock your boundaries or trivialize your convictions. They will understand that growth does not require self-abandonment. It requires self-honesty. When someone insists that you become smaller, quieter, or more agreeable to remain connected, they are not asking for compromise, they are asking for control. Pay attention to how you feel after interactions with certain people. Do you feel grounded and clear, or confused and uneasy? Do you feel empowered or diminished? Your body keeps score. Emotional heaviness, tightness in the chest, or lingering discomfort are not random. They are feedback. When your system reacts, hurts. It is communicating something your mind may be trying to rationalize away. Self-respect is built through alignment. Each time you honor your truth, even when it's uncomfortable, you strengthen your inner foundation. Each time you betray yourself, you weaken it. And people who benefit from your self-betrayal will resist your growth, not because you've changed for the worse, but because you've stopped being easy to use. This is often when tension arises, not because you're wrong, but because you're finally right with yourself. You don't owe anyone access to a version of you that hurts your spirit. You don't need permission to live in alignment, and you don't have to explain why something no longer feels right. The moment someone asks you to abandon yourself to keep them comfortable, that is your sign not to argue, not to convince, but to create distance and choose integrity over approval. The fourth thing you must stay away from anyone who asks from you is your emotional labor without reciprocity. Emotional labor is the unseen work of listening, supporting, soothing, fixing, encouraging, and carrying emotional weight, often without acknowledgement or return. When someone repeatedly unloads their stress, fears, frustrations, and chaos onto you while remaining unavailable when you need support, they are not sharing, they are offloading. And over time, this creates an imbalance that quietly exhausts you. This dynamic often begins with empathy. You care, you understand, you want to help, but slowly you become the emotional container for someone else's unresolved issues. You're expected to be present, patient, and understanding at all times, while your own emotions are minimized, rushed, or ignored. When you express your needs, the conversation shifts back to them. When you're tired, they still demand space. When you're struggling, they suddenly become distant. This is not mutual support. It is emotional extraction. People who rely on your emotional labor often label you as strong, the listener, or the stable one. While these labels may sound affirming, they can become cages. They create expectations that you will always be available, always understanding, always composed. And once you step outside that role, once you need support yourself, the relationship falters. Not because you've changed, but because the connection was built on what you provided, not who you are. Emotional labor without reciprocity teaches you to neglect your own needs. You become so attuned to others that you lose awareness of yourself. You ignore your fatigue. You dismiss your overwhelm. You convince yourself that being needed is the same as being valued. But being valued includes care, curiosity, and consideration for your emotional world, not just access to it. Watch how someone responds when you stop performing emotional labor. Do they ask if you're okay, or do they accuse you of being distant? Do they offer support, or do they pressure you to return to your role? These reactions reveal whether the relationship is mutual or transactional. Healthy people adjust and show concern. Unhealthy people become frustrated when the service they depended on is no longer available. There is a difference between being supportive and being consumed. Support has limits. Support respects capacity. Support flows both ways. When someone expects you to absorb their emotional weight indefinitely, they are not asking for connection, they are asking for relief at your expense. And that relief comes at a cost: your energy, your peace, your emotional clarity. Emotional burnout doesn't happen overnight. It builds through repeated overextension. You feel drained after conversations. You begin to dread interactions. You feel responsible for other people's moods. These are not signs of compassion, they are signs of imbalance. And imbalance, if unaddressed, turns empathy into resentment. You are not obligated to carry what is not yours. You are not responsible for regulating someone else's emotions. And you are not selfish for stepping back when a relationship becomes emotionally one-sided. Anyone who truly cares about you will notice when you're tired, ask how you're feeling, and offer support, not just take it. When someone asks for your emotional labor without offering presence, care, or understanding in return, that is a clear signal, not to harden your heart, but to redirect your energy. Distance, in this case, is not punishment. It is preservation. The fifth thing you must stay away from anyone who asks from you is your stagnation. This is when someone subtly or directly pressures you to stay the same so they can remain comfortable. They may not say, "Don't grow," but their reactions will make it clear. Your improvement unsettles them. Your healing exposes them. Your boundaries inconvenience them. And instead of evolving alongside you, they attempt to anchor you to an old version of yourself that benefited them. Stagnation is often requested through discouragement disguised as concern. They question your goals and they minimize your vision. They remind you of your past mistakes as if they define your future. They say things like, "Why are you changing?" or "You're not like you used to be," without realizing that growth was never meant to preserve familiarity. It was meant to expand capacity. When someone repeatedly reacts negatively to your progress, they are revealing a fear not of losing you, but of losing access to who you were. People who ask for your stagnation often feel threatened by your evolution. Your discipline highlights their avoidance. Your healing challenges their coping mechanisms. Your ambition reflects their unfulfilled desires. Instead of addressing their discomfort internally, they project it onto you. They frame your growth as arrogance, your boundaries as distance, and your focus as neglect. This is how stagnation is normalized by making growth seem like betrayal. Growth requires space. It requires new habits, new perspectives, and sometimes new environments. When someone resists all of these changes, they are not invested in your future, they are invested in your availability. And availability without growth leads to frustration, not fulfillment. You begin to feel held back, restless, and constrained, not because you are ungrateful, but because your potential is being suppressed. Pay attention to how people respond when you set goals, improve yourself, or choose differently. Do they encourage you, or do they mock your efforts? Do they support your discipline, or do they tempt you back into old patterns? Do they celebrate your wins, or do they downplay them? These responses matter. They indicate whether someone is aligned with your direction or attached to your past. No one who truly loves you will ask you to remain small so they can feel big. No one who respects you will ask you to stop growing so they don't have to change. Healthy relationships stretch both people. They adapt, they evolve, they create space for transformation even when it's uncomfortable. Unhealthy relationships resist growth because growth disrupts control. Stagnation is subtle, but its cost is high. Dreams fade, motivation weakens, confidence erodes, and over time you begin to resent the very people you once tried to please, not because they were evil, but because you abandoned yourself to maintain connection. Growth delayed becomes regret. Potential suppressed becomes bitterness, and none of that is worth preserving familiarity. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to choose expansion over comfort. You are allowed to prioritize your future over someone else's insecurity. When someone asks you to pause your progress for their peace of mind, they are asking for something they have no right to demand. By now, a pattern should be forming not around one person, but around a type of dynamic. These 5 things were never random. Silence, time without respect, self-betrayal, emotional labor without reciprocity, and stagnation all serve the same purpose. They keep you accessible, controllable, and unchanged. When someone repeatedly asks for these things, they are not confused about what they're doing. They are consistent, and consistency reveals intention more clearly than words ever could. What makes this difficult is that these requests rarely come with hostility. They come wrapped in familiarity, obligation, history, and emotional ties. You remember who they were to you. You remember the good moments. You remember when things felt different. But growth demands clarity, not nostalgia. And clarity requires you to observe not who someone was, but who they are now and how they interact with the version of you that is emerging. This is where many people struggle, not because they don't see the truth, but because accepting it requires change in how you respond, change in how much access you allow, change in how available you remain. And change often triggers guilt, especially if you've been conditioned to prioritize others over yourself. But guilt does not mean you are wrong. It means you are breaking a pattern that once kept you connected at the cost of yourself. Notice how your body responds when you imagine setting boundaries with certain people. If you feel anxiety, tension, or fear, Ask yourself why. Is it because the boundary is unreasonable, or because the relationship depended on your lack of boundaries? Relationships that require your self-erasure to survive are not relationships, they are arrangements. And arrangements collapse when the terms change. There is a reason you feel drained after certain interactions and energized after others. Energy follows alignment. When you honor your truth, your system relaxes. When you betray it, your system resists. This is not coincidence. It is intelligence. Your intuition has been signaling all along, but clarity arrives when language meets experience. And now, you have the language. Understanding this does not mean you confront everyone. It does not mean you cut people off impulsively. Discernment is quiet. It observes. It adjusts. It chooses distance when necessary and presence when safe. Sometimes the most powerful shift happens without announcement. You simply stop overgiving. You stop explaining. You stop negotiating your boundaries, and the dynamic reveals itself naturally. Pay attention to who resists the new you.
Not everyone who struggles with your growth is malicious. Some are simply attached to who you were, but attachment does not obligate you to remain the same. You are not responsible for managing other people's discomfort with your evolution. You are responsible for honoring your own direction. At this stage, clarity becomes calm. You no longer feel the need to justify yourself. You understand that not everyone will come with you, and that is not failure, that is alignment. When you stop forcing connections that require self-betrayal, you create space for relationships that meet you in truth, respect, and mutual growth. So this is not about becoming cold or distant. It is about becoming clear. And clarity changes everything: how you listen, how you choose, and how you protect what matters most. At some point, awareness becomes responsibility. Once you see the pattern, you can no longer pretend it isn't there. This is the moment where everything you've heard settles, not just in your mind, but in your spirit. Because the truth is simple, even if it's not easy. People who ask you for these 5 things are asking you to slowly disappear. Not all at once, not dramatically, but piece by piece. Your voice, your time, your alignment, your energy, your growth. Staying away from such people does not require anger. It requires honesty about how you feel after interactions. Honesty about what has been consistently taken rather than shared. Honesty about how often you've adjusted yourself to maintain connection. This honesty is not cruel, it is clarifying, and clarity is what restores your power. You may feel tempted to explain yourself, to make others understand, to soften your decisions so they hurt less. But people who benefited from your overgiving rarely understand boundaries. They experience them as rejection. And that reaction is not your responsibility. Is to your peace, your direction, and the version of yourself you are becoming. The version that no longer survives on approval, but lives in alignment. Distance is not abandonment when it is chosen for self-preservation. Silence is not weakness when it is rooted in clarity. Walking away is not failure when staying would cost you yourself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for you and for them is to stop participating in dynamics that require your self-erasure. As you move forward, you will notice something shift. Your energy stabilizes, your mind becomes quieter, your decisions become firmer, and the people who are meant to remain will not be confused by this. They will recognize it. They won't ask you to shrink, delay, or silence yourself. They will meet you where you are, not where they wish you would stay. Let this be the moment you stop negotiating with discomfort. Let this be the moment you trust what you felt but couldn't name. Let this be the moment you choose alignment over attachment, truth over familiarity, and growth over guilt. Not everyone who walks with you is meant to stay, but everyone who stays should honor your voice, your time, your integrity, your emotional capacity, and your evolution. Anyone who asks you to give up these things is not asking for love. They are asking for access they no longer deserve. And from this point forward, you are allowed to say no quietly, clearly, and without apology.